Los Angeles Dodgers trade deadline outlook. This is Ryan Finkelstein, managing editor at justbaseball.com. Got Clay Snowden here, one of our talented writers, and we're going through a lot of the teams here in the NL West. I actually wrote the outlook on this Dodgers team before we started talking here. We were just mentioning how this is a team that is always going to shoot for the moon, the stars. That's why they have Mookie Betts. That's why they have Freddie Freeman. That's why they have Trey Turner. The fact that they have these three guys as kind of their core pieces all traded for, you just don't see that. A lot of teams are going to have at least one homegrown guy. This is a team that is an all-star team, essentially, and that's where they just had the all-star game. And the big story over all-star weekend was Juan Soto. And the Dodgers haven't been talked about too much, but we know they're always in the mix, and we know they have a great farm system. Would it shock you at all if at 5:01 and 59 minutes before the deadline, big blockbuster Jeff Passan, the Los Angeles Dodgers have acquired Juan Soto? They're now going to have 4 MVP candidates in the same freaking lineup.
Yeah, it's incredible what they pull off because they don't care about money. They are willing to pay the prospect capital and the price to get players to come to LA and stay in LA. And that's because they are just serious about, winning a championship. I could see it happen. It's truly incredible when you have a team that won the World Series 2 years ago. You have a team that's been super good, have this type of prospect capital. And why does that happen? Because they're so damn good at development.
Yeah.
And that's why they can afford to trade off these players because they trust their system. And they say, okay, next wave in, we're going to teach these players, develop these players into assets once again 2 years down the road. They have a well-oiled machine right now. And if I'm Juan Soto, that's the type of place I want to sign the extension.
And you just imagine just the idea that you could have Mookie Betts and Juan Soto in the same outfield, not to mention the fact that you already have Freeman locked up. I mean, we'll see if Trey Turner stays or not, but I mean, Mookie, you're only supposed to have one guy that good on a team with Mookie Betts and Juan Soto. And to just think about it, certainly rooting for National League teams as both of us do, we don't want to see it. But then there's still a part of me that's like, what does that look like? Like, what is that lineup? I mean, 1 through 4, I guess. What is it? Is it Betts, Soto, Freeman, Turner? I don't even know how they format the line. I have no idea.
Who cares?
Who cares?
You don't need to focus on formatting the lineup.
You're right.
You're concerned that every single person can literally take over a game 1 through 5.
Crazy,
just hit
man.
Shuffle. Who cares at that point?
Why am I worried just hitting cleanup? It's insane, dude. That's the thing that kind of scary to think about is, do they kind of pull that trigger? But even if they don't, when I wrote this outlook at the time, Juan Soto was not on the board just yet. And I just said, one way or another, they're getting Castillo or Montas. That's what I said at the time, just because I look at their team and yes, they had 3 all-star starters, Anderson, Gonsolin, Kershaw. They still have Urias. They got Buehler. We'll see if he comes back at the end of the season. They have other guys that slot into the back end and do okay, but I think they need a guy to get through the season, bare minimum. If that's a Quintana or anybody else, I think they're going to add a starter, but it's the Dodgers. And I feel like they're going to say, we got the prospects. Let's get Castillo in here. Let's get ourselves a legitimate, guy that can be an ace on any staff and can be our 4. And let's just make this as hard as possible to get through us in a series.
29 other, if you're not a Dodgers fan and you're listening to this, you have to think like Dodgers front office and not like your front office. We are trained to think we need a Quintana to get through. Like, this makes sense. Here's how the roster construction works. You have to throw that out the window and realize if they need a starting pitcher, they're not just going to get Chad Kuhl to eat up some innings and provide 1 or 2 good starts. They're going to say, okay, let's just bring in somebody who is as good or better than everyone else on the market, because they don't mess around.
I honestly think that's what they do. The Soto thing, like we'll continue to say on all these trade deadline outlooks, there's no way to say this is guaranteed. It's going to cost a ridiculous prospect haul to get him, and the Nationals don't have to move him, even though it seems that they really want to. That is a team that can do the Corbin Soto combo and get this thing done. That's why I think there's a possibility. But again, when I look at the Dodgers at this trade deadline, I would be shocked if Castillo or Montas isn't a Dodger. And if not them, I would also look at Pablo Lopez as someone that might be on the move that they could swing a trade for too. just look at the top starters around baseball, and I think they land one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. This team is just unbelievable with how they're willing to wheel and deal. There's still a couple of small holes on that roster too. Trace Thompson is not exactly somebody you'd expect to be playing for the Dodgers. I mean, they could fill out the roster a little bit, but if you're 1 through 4 or 5 is the way that they have, if Will Smith's your 6 or 7 hitter, like you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, and you look in like I think if they are gonna upgrade their lineup on small senses, like they could get like Andrew Benintendi, they can get Ian Happ, they can get one of those guys because you look at Cody Bellinger, you look at Max Muncy this year. I mean that's kind of been their biggest problem. But then I don't know. I look on Twitter and I see Trace Thompson's hitting home runs for them. It's
Yeah.
they're a juggernaut, man. So that is our outlook on this Dodgers team. We don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to do something, and it's probably going to be pretty earth-shattering. So we'll be tuned in at the deadline, of course, to check that out. Make sure you're following all of our coverage at justbaseball.com. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, the State of the Division, for all these trade deadline outlooks, and also our podcast feed at State of the Division. Again, 30 teams, 30 outlooks. We got you covered for everything heading into this deadline.